What up, YouTube? It's me, Johnny, back at it again with another video, and I did it. I did it, y'all. This weekend, I went and watched the Marvels, and in today's video, I want to actually give my honest take and review about the movie. I know there's been plenty of YouTube videos, there's been plenty of articles talking about just how bad people think this movie is. I've even seen articles about how this movie has tanked and how it's even gross worse, at least currently anyway, worse than The Flash, which is a dog awful movie. But today, I'm actually going to rank it off the system that I utilize to rank movies. And I have 5 categories that I go off of with my ranks, which are how good was the storytelling, action scenes, pace, graphics, and rewatchability. Those are going to be the criteria which I rank this movie, and I'm going to then put it on my ranking Marvel graph that I have that will actually determine what do I place this movie. And again, I'm basing this strictly on Marvel movies. So as y'all can see by the graph there, is it Morbius bad, which I think was the worst movie of all time? I mean, it was so bad I wanted my money back. Or is it Infinity War good, which I think is the greatest movie of all time? But before I dive into any of that, please, for me, if you enjoy the content you're getting here, like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit that notification bell so anytime a new video comes out, you will be alerted. Also, if you are interested in additional content from me, check out my podcast that can be found utilizing the same name as the channel on any of the platforms that you see there listed below. It's literally on every podcasting platform. I'm everywhere, y'all. But without further ado, let me dive into this. So to go into the first category, let's talk about storytelling first, since again, movies, that's what they're about. It's about the story, right? And I gotta tell you, there was 4 points in the storytelling for me that let me know and that I saw which made the storytelling not good. The first part was the character building. So there was absolutely no character building for Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, or well, I guess Miss Marvel kind of didn't need it. She does have her own TV show, so if you're interested in her character, you can actually go watch the TV show. But I thought, specifically considering the fact that Monica Rambeau has had no character building at all. I mean, we saw her, in WandaVision, but like since she's had her powers, there's been like no sighting of her until this movie. So it definitely would have helped to have some character building with her character. And then it definitely would have helped with Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. So I know that Brie Larson had Captain Marvel, the first one, right? And I know it did well, but I think that was strictly based on the tailwind of, Infinity War and what happened with the snap, right? And her logo, an icon, if you will, showing up once, Nick Fury was actually getting dusted, right, and paging her. But the thing that makes any character in any movie, but the thing that really, from a Marvel Cinematic Universe standpoint, that made us love them was their character arcs and their building of those characters, right? Made us buy in more. With that said, the thing I have the problem with most with Miss Marvel, which is exactly why I think, or Captain Marvel, excuse me, which is why I think a lot of people don't like this movie, don't like this character, amongst other things, is this specific reason here, which is we don't know what she is. Like, we don't know how to define her. Like, for example, we know that, Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man character, right, that he played in Tony Stark, we know that he is a billionaire who's a narcissist who found out that his company was, doing horrible things, as far as weapons and stuff like that, and he wanted to change that. Now, he was still a narcissist all throughout the movie, but later at the end, he got the redemption arc to where, hey, when Steve Rogers told him in the first Avengers that he wouldn't make the sacrifice play, and then Tony said, well, I'll just cut the cord, right? Now he actually sacrificed himself for a greater purpose, right? So we got to see this character arc in this development. We know that Steve Rogers, or, Captain America, if you will, played by Chris Evans, that he's the guy who would jump on top of a grenade to save his friend. Like, we even knew with like T'Challa or Chadwick Boseman's character, that he had love for his people and his country and he would do anything for them. Like, we have something to definitively tie ourselves and latch ourselves to for each one of these characters, whereas Captain Marvel, there's nothing. She was just a woman who got powers from the space stone in an unfortunate accident. Like, right? And that's the whole thing. That's why I think that's one of the reasons why people have not bought in and really like her character. Now I know, yes, there may be some misogyny out there where there are some men who don't like lead female characters, but I don't really think that's it at all, because we've seen other female-led movies like in Underworld. We saw Resident Evil, right? And we got to see The Hunger Games, and all of those were female-led movies, and those movies did really well, and men actually went to see those too. So I think it has little to do with the misogynistic aspect and everything to do with there's no character development with her character outside of the other very woke things, which I will tell you, in this movie, there was very little to none of that in the movie. I think there was only one line in the story, which was when Brie Larson's character, Captain Marvel, she was basically married to this prince of this one world. Their language was singing, and they were singing in English, by the way, but when you spoke to them in English, as you and I are speaking, nope, couldn't understand you. So they would have to talk to you like this. It was crazy, y'all. But Darvin, when she showed up, and the whole plot of the movie was, hey, I need resources back from my people, because we learned in the movie that Captain Marvel had went and basically destroyed the Supreme Intelligence on Hala, which is the Kree home world, and basically sent their whole world into from an environmental standpoint, even so much so they destroyed the sun. Don't know how they squared that circle. I don't think they did, but anyway, the only thing she mentioned as far as the line was like, this is a matriarchal society or something like that, but she didn't like hype it up. It was kind of like, oh, it's just this thing, right? But outside of that, none of that woke stuff. And like we've seen in all the Marvel movies. But there was nothing to latch on to. And then a lot of the things, as I mentioned, that should have been in the story, a lot of those things either were just stated, just told to us, or they were just off screen. Like they didn't put in the story or anything like that. So it just left you either them just telling you what's happening, or you just having to, kind of figure out like, oh, this happened over here. So it just, from a storytelling standpoint, it just didn't make sense. There was a lot of things in the movie that didn't make sense to tie the story together, in my opinion. So storytelling, not that great. Action scenes. So there was, I will admit, a lot of fighting in this movie. Now, with that being said, just because there's a lot of fight scenes in the movie doesn't mean that they were good. And the fighting scenes in this movie were not good. You could tell that Monica Rambeau was just not a natural fighter. And even Brie Larson's character, she did things, but it just felt clunky. It felt out of place. It just felt like it was there in the movie, For example, and I know they had this weird thing where they were just switching places with one another when they used their powers, because Brie Larson or Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, they just thought that, hey, what would be a good idea? Let me just touch this energy in space. Like, it's the dumbest concept ever. But anyway, they did that, and it started causing them to swap places. Oh, which, by the way, probably should have mentioned there will be spoilers in this, me talking about this, but I'm sure y'all probably figured it out by now. But anyway, it just caused them to switch places while they were fighting, and it just wasn't good fight scenes. Like, for example, in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which didn't do very well either, but that movie had phenomenal fight scenes. And if you haven't seen that movie, think back to Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and how that movie, in my opinion, has some of the best choreographed fighting. Matter of fact, I think not even just Marvel, but probably all the cinema. But those fight scenes, not only were they meaningful, they were well put together and well done. This one just kind of felt like they did it, and it didn't feel well done at all. So the action scenes were And then the pace of the movie. They moved on from events too fast. Now here's what I mean by that. So as I mentioned, Darvin, right, the main antagonist of the film, her whole thing was trying to get resources back for her people on Hala because of what Captain Marvel did. So what she was doing was going around and creating wormholes or jump points, as it was called in the movie, to basically get those resources back to Hala. And the first place she did that, for example, was a refugee Skrull world, right? She went there and she opened up a jump point, which then started to suck the air out of the place to give Hala breathable air, because they had lost breathable air, they had lost water. Again, I mentioned the sun, right, wasn't there anymore. So it was becoming an uninhabitable planet. Now, in the midst of all this happening, the planet was getting destroyed, and they were trying to get people on ships to get them off. And in the midst of this, literally the planet is getting destroyed. People are dying. Miss Marvel, this is her first interaction with anything like this truly happening, right? And this felt like this was a place to where you could actually even add to her character development, right? And Brie Larson's Captain Marvel at that point, right? It felt like that was a spot where you could see this devastation happening. Miss Marvel having to come to the realization that you can't save everybody, which is what, Captain Marvel told her, and that this would hang over, right? Like, wow, I can't, wow, so we just got to let these people die? It felt like that should have been the thing that, they could have been stuck on, but they didn't. They just moved past it. Like, the only thing that happened was when they got to the other side, she just kind of, Captain Marvel just apologized to Kamala Khan and was like, hey man, I'm sorry I yelled at you back there. And she was just like, oh, no big deal. It's like they just moved on from it. Like, it just happened. Like, worlds get destroyed and people die all the time. So we should just move on. So the pacing was too fast with certain things. And then the other thing, I get it. There was a lot of things, at least from reports, that they cut from the movie, right? They cut the movie down to the point to where it was only an hour and 45-minute runtime, right? So even less than 2 hours is probably one of the shorter films they made lately in the MCU. But doing that really, really hurt the pace that I felt this movie could have had and missed out on. As far as the graphics go, look, it wasn't, top tier graphics. I didn't hate it either. It wasn't, Naruto Shippuden with him fighting Pain right after he had went into Fortel's version cloak mode. For all my anime fans out there, I know what I'm talking about in that Pain fight. I mean, that Pain arc was wonderful up until that point. Still was the best arc. But anyway, to get back on track. The graphics weren't great, but they weren't bad either. It was just, your typical, what you would expect to see in a 2023 movie level of graphics, if you will. Just that good. Like, it wasn't Quantum Mania, even though that movie was not that great either. It had amazing graphics. This one, graphics was less than that, but, still okay from a graphic standpoint. Now, rewatchability, last but not least. Rewatchability. In my opinion, even though I saw this movie, would I rewatch it? No. There's nothing that happened in this movie that made you have to rewatch this movie or made you even want to rewatch this movie. Like, even though they tried to do some stuff, right, which at the end of the movie by, adding the Young Avengers, or at least the hint of it, right, it being done, Kamala Khan showing up Nick Fury style in Kate Bishop's apartment, talking about I'm putting a team together and all that. I mean, that was tragic. Speaking of, Samuel L. Jackson, man, Nick Fury seems just so worthless now in movies. Like, why even have him here? He used to lead S.H.I.E.L.D., and now that's gone. So it's what is he even doing in these movies? And I like Samuel L. Jackson, but his character feels useless. Anyway, so adding that hint to the Young Avengers, which again in comic books, I mean, they were there, they did things right, but I mean, they weren't that popular in the comic books, so I highly doubt that Marvel's gonna make them somehow good now, even if they add Miles Morales' Spider-Man to it, which they probably are. Like, I don't think that's going to save that project. And then at the end credits scene, having Beast show up, again, to hint at the X-Men. And there's a lot of Marvel fans out there who was waiting to see when would X-Men be introduced into the MCU, especially after Marvel bought them from Fox. But just throwing them in there in this movie, is it going to make anybody want to either A, rewatch it, or B, watch it? Because there's plenty of videos just like this one talking about what happened in the movie. So now people are just like, why would I have to go see this when I could just figure it out in these videos? This one just felt like it was a movie that was done, right? And then that was it. It was just a okay movie. So if I had to rank it on my Marvel ranking graph, I'm going to say it falls slightly below the middle, right? Kind of like in that spot. It wasn't Morbius bad. Morbius was bad. Like, that was a bad movie. And it's certainly in Infinity War good. Actually, great. I'm sorry I used the word good there. Great. But at the same time, it's easily forgettable. The thing that people will remember this movie the most from is probably two things. One, how it bombed, which is never what you want your movie remembered as. Or two, the Florkins, or the cats in there eating people, which I actually thought was a decent comedic touch. I know some people didn't like it, but I thought that was actually comedically funny the way they did that part. But other than that, that's my thoughts on the movie. Hey, let me know what your thoughts are. If you saw the movie, did you like it? Did you not like it? What do you think could have been done better with it? I'm sure there's a number of things people will list in the comments below. Or if you're just going to wait till it comes out on Disney Plus, or you just flat out not going to see it at all. Let me know your thoughts. With that being said, until the next one, I will talk to y'all later. Peace.